Keanu Reeves is one of the most loved actors in the world. He is not only famous for his movies but also for being a kind and humble person. He believes that a person's true value is shown by how they treat people who cannot give them anything in return. When Keanu is not working, he lives a quiet life. He does not like too much attention, but he always notices the people around him. He pays special attention to those who are honest and kind. One of those people was Isabella, his housekeeper for many years. Isabella was a quiet woman, strong in her faith. She always wore a simple cross around her neck, a symbol of something very important to her. One night, at a big and fancy charity party, something very unfair happened. A rich and rude guest made fun of Isabella just because she wore that cross. But what no one knew was that Keanu was watching everything. He stayed silent, but his heart burned with anger. How long could he stay quiet? What would he do when he saw someone being treated badly? How far would he go to show that true greatness is not about wearing expensive clothes or fancy jewelry, but about having kindness and respect for others? Stay with us until the end of this powerful story. And before we begin, tell us, where are you watching from? We love reading your comments and always take time to reply. It was 5:15 in the morning. The alarm clock rang just like it had every day for over 30 years. In a small brick house in a quiet neighborhood of Los Angeles, Isabella opened her eyes. Before she even got out of bed, she reached for her chest. She touched her cross. It was cold and familiar, like an old hug from someone she loved. That cross was not just a necklace. It was a memory of her mother, Donna Aparecida. Her mother had taught her to be strong, to have faith, and to always live with dignity. This cross was a piece of her past that she carried everywhere. It reminded her of love, strength, and everything her mother had given her. Isabella was 63 years old. She had worked as a housekeeper for many years. She was a widow and her 3 children were all grown up now. Her faith had always kept her strong, and that cross was like her shield. Even though her back sometimes hurt from years of hard work, she still walked proudly. She knew that no matter what happened, no one could take away her dignity. But today felt a little different. She was going to clean the house of one of the most respected actors in Hollywood, Keanu Reeves. Isabella was always thankful for her job. She had been working at Keanu's house for 12 years. From the first day, he had treated her with kindness. He looked her in the eye when he spoke to her. He offered her coffee. He even remembered the names of her grandchildren. "Good morning, Donna Isabella," he would always say with a warm smile. Today felt like just another normal day, almost. Isabella packed her cleaning supplies in her old bag. Then Keanu called her to the veranda. "Donna Isabella, I know you came in early today, but tomorrow night we're having a big charity event here," he said. "Lots of media, guests, the whole deal." Isabella nodded, already imagining how fancy the party would be. One of the guests left a bracelet behind during the last meeting. "Did you happen to find it?" Isabella thought for a moment. Then she reached into her apron pocket and pulled out a small velvet pouch. "This one? I found it under the armchair," she said. "That's it. Perfect. Could you stop by tomorrow night to drop it off? I won't be available and I'd rather it be given by someone I trust. It's very valuable and you're always careful." Isabella hesitated. A fancy party at night? With all those rich guests? She swallowed hard. "Are you sure, sir?" "Absolutely. Come however you'd like, Donna Isabella. This house is yours too." Isabella smiled politely, but inside she felt unsure. She had met many people who pretended to be kind, but Keanu was different. His kindness was real. That evening at home, she told her youngest daughter, Raquel, about the conversation. "Mom, that's an invitation," Raquel said excitedly. "It's not just about the bracelet. He wants you there." "Oh, child, don't get carried away. I'll go hand it over and leave. That's all. I don't even have the right clothes for a party like that," Isabella said. Raquel, who worked at a clothing store, smiled. "Tomorrow I'll help you pick something out. And the cross, you're wearing it, right?" Isabella touched her chest. "Always. This cross is my protection. It's who I am." The next morning, Isabella went to a small salon to get her hair done. She wore a clean, neatly ironed navy blue outfit. Her mother's cross shone in the center of her chest. A taxi dropped her off at the mansion. Luxury cars lined the street. A red carpet stretched across the entrance. Flashing cameras lit up the night. Fancy voices filled the air, speaking in English with accents from all over the world. Isabella felt nervous. She took a deep breath. "Just deliver the bracelet and go," she whispered to herself. She stepped inside quietly, trying not to draw attention. But before she even reached the main hall, she noticed the looks people were giving her. Her clothes were simple. She looked different from the others. And her cross, big and shining on her chest, stood out in a place where people judged others by what they wore. She walked through a hallway decorated with expensive flowers. She carefully stepped around waiters carrying trays of drinks. "Donna Isabella," someone called from behind. It was one of the security guards. He smiled kindly. "Mr. Reeves said you'd be coming. You can leave the bracelet in the lounge. Miss Catherine is waiting for it." Isabella nodded, thankful. She walked toward the lounge. The room was even grander than she remembered. Crystals sparkled from chandeliers. Elegant dresses shimmered under golden lights. But there was something else in the air: judgment. It was thick like a strong perfume. Then she saw her. A tall, beautiful woman stood in the middle of the room. Her skin was olive-toned and her jet-black hair shone under the lights. She wore a tight red dress, covered in sparkling jewels. Her strong perfume arrived before she did. "Catherine." Her eyes landed on Isabella's cross. Her lips curled into a cold smile. "Oh, so it's you," Catherine said. Isabella held out the velvet pouch. "You left this behind." "I found it under the armchair," she said kindly. Catherine took the pouch without saying thank you. She looked Isabella up and down, her eyes sharp. "And you came dressed like that? How interesting." Isabella felt uncomfortable. She touched her cross. "I just came to deliver this. I'll be on my way," she said. Catherine's smile didn't change, but her voice became soft and sharp at the same time. "This is a charity gala, not a countryside church gathering." Isabella froze. Her face turned red. Her hands felt sweaty. She held onto her cross tightly. She turned slightly, ready to leave. She didn't want to argue, not here. But before she could take a step, Catherine moved closer and whispered something that made Isabella's heart stop. "You're not going to believe this," Isabella told her daughter. "He invited me to the party to give back a bracelet I found." She touched the cross necklace she always wore. But what she didn't know was that this night would change her life forever. The night had come. The Reeves Foundation Charity Gala lit up the Hollywood Hills like stars had fallen from the sky. Fancy cars arrived one by one. Men in tuxedos helped guests step out. Cameras flashed bright lights everywhere. Famous people smiled, showing their perfect teeth. Women in shiny dresses walked in high heels, their laughter filling the air. Some laughed because they were happy, others just to fit in. Inside, golden chandeliers sparkled, and music played so perfectly it almost didn't seem real. Everything looked rich and perfect. Then Isabella arrived. She didn't take a fancy car. Instead, she came in a simple taxi. She didn't want attention. She just wanted to return the bracelet and go home. She stepped out, smoothing her navy blue dress. It was clean and neat, one she had ironed that morning. Her cross necklace rested over her heart, shining softly in the moonlight. When she reached the entrance, a man in a suit looked at her. He wasn't sure if he should open the door or tell her she was in the wrong place. She nodded and he finally stepped aside. As soon as Isabella entered, she felt it, people looking at her. Not just quick glances but judging looks. They saw her simple dress, her worn-out shoes, her plain bag. And most of all, they saw her cross. In a room full of glittering diamonds and expensive clothes, she stood out. Some people looked curious, others amused, a few didn't care. But one thing was clear, she did not belong there. Isabella kept walking, holding the small velvet pouch in her hand. She needed to find someone she knew, Catherine. The music played, people talked and laughed, waiters carrying trays of food and drinks, but no one offered her anything. She wasn't part of their world. Then she saw her. Near the staircase, a group of women stood together. Their dresses sparkled like gems. Among them, in a bright red dress, stood Catherine. Isabella took a deep breath, adjusted her cross and walked toward her. But before she could reach her, someone else stopped her. "Excuse me," a voice called. Isabella turned and saw a woman in a shiny gold dress. The woman looked at her with a tight smile. "Are you one of the workers?" Isabella shook her head. "I came to return something to a guest." The woman raised an eyebrow, looked her up and down, then walked away without another word. Isabella kept going. Catherine was laughing with some rich-looking men. Isabella stepped closer. But then Catherine turned and saw her. Silence. For a moment, Catherine's smile faded. Her eyes went straight to the cross. Then she smirked. "Well, well," she said loudly so everyone could hear. "If it isn't the Holy Messenger herself." Isabella held out the pouch. "You left this at the last meeting. Mr. Reeves asked me to return it." Catherine took the pouch, looked at it for a second, then laughed. But it wasn't a kind laugh. "You know," she said, stepping closer, I almost didn't recognize you without your mop and gloves. People nearby chuckled softly. Some didn't know whether to laugh or look away. I wasn't trying to, Isabella started. But Catherine cut her off. I mean, it's very brave of you to come dressed like that, wearing that cross. Are you here to make a statement, or did you just get lost? Isabella's fingers touched her cross. I only came to return the bracelet. Catherine walked around her slowly. This is a fancy party, not a church gathering. And that, she pointed at Isabella's cross, is just an old story for small minds. Isabella's throat felt tight. Someone nearby laughed softly. Others looked away. No one helped. Catherine leaned in and whispered, people like you wear things like that because it's all you have. But it doesn't belong here. Then she turned back to the crowd, smiling. Cheers everyone. To be generous and to know our place. Some guests laughed softly. Some just sipped their drinks, pretending not to hear. But they all let it happen. Isabella stood still. Her heart pounded. She wanted to turn and run. But something held her in place. A memory, her mother's voice, years of quiet strength. Then footsteps. The laughter stopped. People turned to look. At the top of the grand staircase stood Keanu Reeves. He had seen everything. Catherine's smile didn't fade. She turned to him, pretending to be surprised. Keanu, I didn't see you up there. But he didn't answer. Not yet. Isabella stood frozen. She had been ready to leave, to escape her humiliation quietly. But Keanu's presence, the way he stood there, made her stay. He started walking down the stairs. Slow, steady steps. Each one echoed in the silent room. People whispered. Then stopped. Catherine stood taller, flipping her hair as if nothing had happened. But her eyes flickered with nervousness. Keanu reached the bottom step. He looked around the room. His voice was calm, but it cut through the air like a sharp knife. I saw everything. The room froze. Catherine gave a small, nervous laugh. Saw what exactly? She asked sweetly. Keanu didn't answer her question. Instead, he said, I saw how you looked at her. How you mocked her. And I saw how everyone else stayed silent. The guests stood stiffly in their suits and dresses. I saw people laughing, Keanu continued. I saw others pretending not to. And I saw someone who came here to return something and got nothing but humiliation. Isabella's fingers shook as she held her cross. Keanu walked up to her. Without hesitation, he took her hand gently. He looked at her, not with pity but with understanding. As if, at that moment, she was the only person in the room who truly mattered. Then, for the first time since arriving, Isabella felt warmth. Not from the golden lights or the expensive decorations, but from Keanu's kindness. It was a warmth that spread, making her shoulders relax, her heartbeat slow. Catherine stood frozen. Her mouth opened slightly, then closed. She wasn't used to being ignored. Keanu turned back to the crowd. We talk about generosity, but do we practice it? His voice was calm but firm. We talk about kindness, but do we show it? No one answered. Silence wrapped around the room like a heavy blanket. Isabella, still holding onto Keanu's hand, finally spoke. Her voice was quiet but steady. I didn't come here to be noticed. I only came to return what wasn't mine. Keanu nodded. And yet, you were made to feel like you didn't belong. Another silence. Then, someone in the back shifted uncomfortably. Finally, Keanu spoke again, his words clear. A person's worth isn't measured by what they wear. It's measured by what's in their heart. And with that, he gently led Isabella away from the crowd, away from the judging eyes, and out into the cool night air, where she could finally breathe again. He turned to the big group of people. They were all dressed up in fancy suits and shiny dresses. Some of them were laughing, some were pretending not to, and one person had come to return something but ended up leaving with nothing except shame. Isabella swallowed hard. Her fingers shook as she held onto the little cross around her neck. Keanu walked up to her, not afraid, not even for a second. He held her hand, not because he felt sorry for her, but because he understood her. At that moment, it was like she was the most important person in the whole room. He turned back to the crowd. You all want to talk about kindness tonight? About helping people, caring and giving? Catherine, a woman in the crowd, crossed her arms. This is getting out of hand. Keanu looked right at her, his eyes strong and serious. Is it? He asked. Catherine glanced around, looking for someone to agree with her. But nobody said a word. That cross she wears, Keanu said, isn't just a pretty necklace. It's a memory. It's a life. It's a story. But none of you took the time to ask about it. Some of you only laughed. He took a deep breath. I brought you all here tonight to help others, to give money, yes, but also to open your hearts. What I didn't expect was that the person with the most kindness in this room would be the one that some of you treated like she was invisible. He turned back to Isabella. Then, in front of everyone, he knelt down. The whole room gasped. Isabella shook her head. "Mr. Reeves, please," she whispered. He gently raised his hand. "If anyone here is truly great tonight, it's her." Isabella's face changed. She looked shocked, confused, even a little embarrassed. But mostly she looked proud. Catherine's face went tight with anger. "This is ridiculous. She's just a cleaning lady." Keanu stood up slowly. "And what are you, Catherine?" he asked. The room fell silent again. "If anyone here is special tonight, it's Isabella," Keanu said. "And what happens next will change everything." The gala had become completely quiet. No music, no chatter. Just hearts beating beneath expensive clothes. Keanu stood tall, calm but strong. His eyes looked at each person. Those who had laughed, those who had looked away, those who had said nothing. He wasn't here to act. He was here to tell the truth. "This event," he said, his voice steady and full of fire, "was never meant to be about fancy pictures or who is the richest or who has the most followers on social media." He paused. "It was meant to be about people. About real struggles, real pain, real hard work." He pointed to Isabella. "She's not just someone who cleans floors. She's someone who taught me what true strength looks like. Strength when no one is watching. She has carried more burdens on her own than some of us could handle, even with a whole team of helpers." The crowd murmured, shifting in their seats. Some looked ashamed. Catherine stood stiff, arms still crossed, but she no longer looked in charge. Keanu's voice grew stronger. "Isabella wakes up before the sun. She works hard so her grandchildren can go to school. She prays every morning. And she holds on to the last thing her mother gave her, this cross. Not for show, but for strength." He turned to Catherine. "And tonight, someone tried to take that from her. Not by stealing it, but by making her feel small. And that kind of theft, the theft of dignity, is the worst of all." Isabella stood still, looking down slightly, still clutching the cross. She could feel hundreds of eyes on her. But for the first time, it didn't feel like judgment. It felt like respect. Keanu stepped toward the stage where a microphone was waiting for him. A few people clapped softly. Then more joined in. And suddenly, the whole room was filled with applause. It started slow but grew louder and louder. Some people were even crying. Not because they felt guilty, but because something real had just happened in front of them. Keanu raised his hand and the room quieted. "I was going to stand here tonight and talk about numbers," he said. "I was going to tell you how much our charity has raised, how much we hope to raise tonight." He looked at Isabella. "But that doesn't matter anymore." He turned back to the guests. "You all walked in here tonight with full wallets. But how many of you walked in with full hearts?" Silence. He looked at Isabella and gestured for her to come to the stage. She shook her head, nervous. Keanu stepped down from the platform and walked back to her. He held out his hand, palm open. "No pressure," he said softly. Slowly, Isabella placed her hand in his. He led her up to the stage. Standing under the lights, the room suddenly felt different, like she was meant to be there all along and everyone else was only now realizing it. Keanu smiled at her. "This is Isabella. And before we say anything else, I think it's time you hear her story." He stepped aside. Isabella looked out at the sea of faces. She had never spoken to a crowd before. Never been on a stage like this. She placed her hand over her heart, touched the cross and spoke. "My name is Isabella," she said. "I was born in a small town in Brazil. I came to this country to work. I have cleaned houses since I was 19 years old. I raised my kids alone after my husband passed away. I believe in God. I believe in kindness. And I believe that dignity doesn't have a price tag." The room was silent, but this silence felt different. It was listening. "I wear this cross," Isabella continued, "because my mother gave it to me before she died. She told me, whenever you feel invisible, remember, God sees you." She looked at Keanu and smiled softly. "And tonight I was reminded that sometimes other people see you too." The crowd clapped again, louder than before. But this time it wasn't just for Keanu. It was for her. At the back of the room, Catherine took a step toward the exit. Her face was unreadable. She wasn't the center of attention anymore. And the silence around her wasn't admiration. It was accountability. Then from the audience, a young woman in a silver dress stood up. Her voice was clear and strong. "I know her," she said, pointing at Catherine. The whole room turned. The young woman stepped forward. "I know Catherine. And you need to hear her story too." No one was ready for what happened next. The energy in the room changed again. Eyes turned from Isabella to the young woman in silver. She took a deep breath, then said, "Catherine has been hiding something. And I think it's time we all know the truth." Gasps filled the air. Catherine's face turned pale. "What are you talking about?" she snapped, but there was fear in her voice. The young woman stepped closer. "I know you because I was once like you. I was afraid of being seen for who I really was. And I know why you're acting this way tonight. You weren't always rich, were you? You weren't always powerful." The room held its breath. Keanu looked between them, his face calm but interested. "Go on," he said. The young woman nodded. "Catherine grew up poor. Just like Isabella. Just like me. But instead of remembering where she came from, she chose to pretend. She chose to shame others instead of lifting them up." Catherine's lips trembled. The crowd waited. And then something unexpected happened. Catherine lowered her head and whispered, "You're right." And with those words, everything changed. A quiet feeling spread through the crowd. As she stepped forward, people watched closely. Her name was Sophia. We grew up on the same street. Her mother made clothes for people. They didn't have much money, but they believed in God. They wore small crosses, just like the one Donna Isabella wears every Sunday at church. Catherine stood still, frozen. When she got a scholarship and left, she tried to forget where she came from. She changed her way of talking, her last name, and even the cross she used to wear. Sophia turned to Isabella. "She saw you tonight and it scared her," Sophia said, "because you reminded her of a part of herself that she hid away so she could fit in." Sophia looked at Catherine. "She wasn't trying to hurt you. She was fighting in the mirror." Catherine's voice shook when she finally spoke. "I didn't hate you," she said. "I hated who I used to be. I was so afraid of not belonging that I erased myself." Tears ran down her face. "I have lived so long without a cross in my heart." Isabella stepped closer, calm and kind. "You tried to get rid of the thing that made you strong," she said softly. "But that part of you was never weak. It was just hidden." Catherine looked down, feeling ashamed. "I don't deserve your kindness," she whispered. "But if your cross still has space for someone like me." The room was completely silent. Isabella looked at Catherine's face, then slowly reached out and held her shaking hands. "Faith doesn't push people away," she said. "It welcomes them. It doesn't punish. It helps." Catherine fell into her arms, crying. The sound of quiet sobs spread through the room, not just from her but from others who remembered their own past. Then Keanu stepped forward with a small velvet box. "I had this made for you, Donna Isabella," he said. He opened the box. Inside was a beautiful white gold necklace with a small green emerald cross. The crowd gasped softly. The necklace sparkled under the lights. Keanu held it out to Isabella, but she only placed her hand on her chest, touching her old, worn cross. "This one has been with me my whole life," she said. "It may not shine like that, but it carries everything I am." Keanu smiled. "It shines brighter than any gold I could give." Then he handed the new necklace to Catherine. "This is not a prize," he told her. "It's a seed. When you meet someone who reminds you of who you used to be, give it to them. Help them remember who they really are." Catherine held the necklace in her hands, her eyes full of emotion. She didn't say anything, but she felt the weight of what it meant. Isabella, still touching her old cross, whispered, "It's not how shiny it is that matters. It's the truth behind it." A young woman in the crowd stood up. "I know her story," she said, "and you all need to hear what she has been hiding." The whole room turned to look at her. No one was ready for what she would say next. The big, fancy party became completely quiet. Catherine stood in front of Isabella, shaking. The guests were unsure if they were watching an ending or a new beginning. From the side of the room, the young woman stepped forward again. Her name was Sophia. She looked like someone who had waited a long time for this moment. "I know her," Sophia said, looking at Catherine. "Not the fancy woman you see tonight, but the girl she used to be." The crowd gasped softly. Her mother made clothes for people. They didn't have much, but they had faith. She wore a cross just like Donna Isabella's. She went to church every Sunday. She helped my brother with his schoolwork. She wanted to lift her family out of poverty. Sophia stopped and took a deep breath. But when she made it, she didn't just leave. She erased everything. She changed how she talked. She changed her name. She took off her cross. Catherine looked up. Her voice was shaky but honest. "I was ashamed of where I came from," she admitted. "So I buried it. And tonight, when I saw you," she turned to Isabella, "you reminded me of everything I tried to forget. And I hated you for it." Isabella didn't move. "You didn't hate me," she said gently. You hated the part of yourself that you thought had no value. Catherine wiped her tears. I became mean, she said. Not because I wanted to, but because I thought it was the only way to survive. I have lived a long time without a cross in my heart. Isabella stepped closer. You can wear it around your neck, she said, touching her own cross. But it only shines when it lives here. She touched Catherine's heart. Keanu stepped forward. His voice was steady and kind. This is why we are here, he said. To remember who we were and decide who we want to be. Catherine turned back to Isabella, still trembling. I don't deserve forgiveness, she said. But if your cross still has space for someone like me, maybe I can change. The room held its breath. Isabella, the woman who had been embarrassed earlier that night, simply opened her arms. She didn't hug Catherine to save her. She hugged her to welcome her back to herself. The room stayed quiet. Some people cried. Others bowed their heads, not out of sadness but out of respect. Keanu stepped forward with a small box. Inside was a golden necklace with a delicate emerald cross. I had this made for you, he said to Isabella. But I think it belongs with her now. He handed it to Catherine. Not as a reward but as a reminder. Pass it on when the time is right. Isabella smiled and touched her own old cross. I'll keep mine, she said. It may not shine like that, but it carries love. The audience stood. They did not clap. They just stood there, feeling something deep inside them change. Keanu turned to the crowd. She walked in unnoticed, he said. She leaves reminding us who we were before the world taught us to forget. As guests came forward, they didn't treat Isabella like a famous person. They treated her like a mirror, someone who helped them see themselves. Isabella nodded humbly. I just stayed true, she whispered. As people slowly left, Keanu walked Isabella to a taxi. You changed this place, he said. She smiled. No, she said. I just made the silence loud enough to be heard. And as the car drove into the night, the room remained full, not with people but with hearts opened by the quiet power of kindness. How many crosses have you ignored, thinking they didn't belong? And how many strong people walked beside you while you stayed silent? If you like this story, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment below and let me know what you think. And don't forget to subscribe for more thrilling adventures, mysteries, and unforgettable moments. Your support keeps these stories alive and the creativity flowing. Thanks for watching. I can't wait to see you in the next video.